Everybody knows that people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it's true.
Okay, well...
People quit bad bosses.
What if what I just said, what if it's not true? It's just so ingrained in the psyche of everyone that it's not true. What if blaming bad bosses is just a scapegoat that lets the broken system off the hook?
Well, then the whole system's broke because everybody pretty much blames their bosses when you say, why do you want to leave?
Have we already reached that part of the podcast where we say burn it all down?
You can go there.
Well, I came here ready to burn it all down. And yes, I'm on the side of defending bad managers. That's where I am on this podcast.
Because someone has to do it.
Because someone's got to do the dirty work. That's right. I Googled it before when we were prepping for the podcast. I did Google it, and it's a real stat. It says that managers account for at least 70% of variance in employee engagement scores. That's a real Gallup poll. I did Google it. It's a real thing. I can link that. I can pull up the article here in a second if we want to actually read what it says. Because again, who knows what there's like a study of 3 dudes in the bathroom on a lunch break or something says. Well, I guess 70% couldn't be 3 dudes, so it must be 10 dudes. I don't know why we're hanging in bathrooms so much. It was a weird study. That's what I'm saying. I don't know anything about Gallup.
We'll go with that. Gallup stuff.
This is all the stuff. All the best stuff gets cut in podcasts.
70% variance. Okay, so let that be a data point, right? What did the study say?
Oh, it says that the manager is as the main contributor to employee engagement or not. It's using this Gallup poll. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other polls, but this one is the most specific to this. Well, there it is. Look, I even have it in my history right there. Great managers create the right environment. Only 30% of U.S. employees, 30% worldwide are engaged, whatever that means. And here's so it says... I guess I'm on the study, so I might as well put it on the screen. So it says, not every team is led by a great manager. That's why managers account for at least 70% of the variance in employee engagement scores across business units, Gallup estimates in the State of the American Manager, Analytics and Advice for Leaders. And I can find out if I could work a mouse when this study was done. Oh, this is a fun one. It says 35% of U.S. managers are engaged in their job, whatever engaged means. So it says, is a study over 4 decades, 2.5 million manager-led teams in 195 countries, 27 million employees. Now, because I work at the role that I work in right now, I'm very critical about these kind of studies. The way I ask you these 10 questions leads you in the way I want to present the data from these 10 questions. The point being made in the study is the manager makes a big impact on the employee's engagement.
And I think the study cites 30-odd% in the U.S. So 30% are engaged is what it's saying.
And even, I think when it considered just globally, I think that number even went down.
Further down. Right, half that and half that, which is funny. And so I'm trying to reconcile that in my mind. Why would that be, right? And I can only come up with the fact that here, people have to get along, otherwise they're shown the door. Right? We're very much the leaders in this hire and fire thing, and I don't know if that plays a factor.
I was going to say I have a theory, and it also advances my arguing point on this one. I have a theory. The theory is everyone globally is just looking to the U.S. and copying their terrible ways of working, and then doing it poorly because it doesn't work here. I mean, it only works in 30% of the cases. And they're even struggling with implementing something they saw somewhere else in their own culture that really doesn't adapt to other people's cultures because it really doesn't even work for American culture. So how's it going to work for Does this sound like any other models being adopted?
Copied? Yeah.
Does it sound like any particular company's model that may be named after the company and have a model?
We won't mention names.
Just like the theory of it being copied and someone actually puts it into practice and say, this doesn't work at all. In fact, none of this works.
Yeah, except in that case, it never was implemented in the first place. But okay. So
that would require you to read past the first paragraph.
Yeah.
We don't have time for that. So on your side, the reasons that support the managers are the primary reason people quit.
And I think some of that is borne out by evidence from exit interviews, where people are asked, what are the main factors why you're quitting this job? And more often than not, people cite their managers as the main factors. Now, bear in mind, not everyone's going to say that, even if it was true. Some people will simply say, it's just not for me. Or, I've had a change of heart. I want to work in a different direction now. But that's because they don't feel safe saying that it's because of their manager. So if the ones that are saying that, the exit interviews bear out, that was the majority of them.
I 100% am on board with what you're saying right now. I don't have any pushback. I've worked for managers that are great. They're great, and we're all cool. But when the pressure is on, when they're getting pressured, when things blow up or there's deadlines or whatever, they are a completely different person. All the good, like psychological safety, and we got to have planning and blah, blah, blah. Like all that stuff goes completely out the window when the stress is on. I was at a company one time working with the CEO. We had to talk to the investors about something that was happening in the company. We presented the roadmap to the investors, and he brought me along as the product manager. I was trying to separate product from the C-level. They were trying to bring in a product manager for the first time. And we went in front of the investors and presented the roadmap. Okay, we brought in a product manager. He helped us work this out. This is what we think the roadmap's going to be. This is the next 3 to 6 months, and this is where we could go a year out from there, basically. Like short term, longer term, a 2-tier type of thing, something they've never done before with the investors. And they brought me in to present, basically. The investors basically grilled me and the CEO together in that call. The investors had ideas of how we could expand the business. That the CEO, he had other ideas. I'm not going to say it was contentious, but I didn't know those people, so I don't feel completely open to push back. Also, I was pretty new on that contract.
Right.
You know, I'd only been there like a couple weeks before going in front of the investors. Not that I was out of my depth, because like I know product management. You know, so okay.
That's the reason.
But I remember we the investors wanted us to go back, weigh what they said, get some evidence, look at the software, look at the market, and think about it, and then come back and do whatever. And I remember those 2 weeks before we went back to the investors, because he was under that pressure, like pressure from his board, pressure from the other founders, because they had ideas that like we should go in different directions, pressure from the industry about, oh, why aren't you doing what? And then like technical pressures of like technical debt and things like that. In that 2-week period, he was just super stressed and just became a different person. When we were on the other side of it, he went back to being we were cool and very laid back and that kind of stuff. That was like a little window, a little switch in my head, my career. I was like, oh yeah, people go and revert to these bad habits when they're under all these pressure. The team members I want to be on the team with, they don't change when the pressure's on. I just want them to stay. I want even team members. I want even-handed, even-tempered team members. I don't want someone to melt down when pressure's gonna be applied.
Yeah, I think at a team level, you have more chance of encountering those kinds of people and those behaviors than you do at the leadership level. Only because the pressures are different at the team level versus higher. I would hope so.
Yeah, you would hope.
But also, I think at that level, the leadership level, it's the culture that will put up with whatever behaviors are being exhibited.
Well, I like where you're going, because you're making my case for me right now. It wasn't that CEO. In this case, it was directly to the top of the company. There was no chain. In that case, this CEO was undertrained. He came from an industry of doing the thing. Like he was the subject matter expert. Like product people get into the field. Yeah. He was definitely the product person that got into the field because he was a great subject matter expert, a master of his domain. But that's not product management. That's solving a particular problem. It transitions to product management, sure. But he didn't have the skill of product management. And then he was overworked because he was asked to do all his normal jobs, because the CEO does a small company does a ton. This is like a small company under 30 employees. He was working at the strategy level and the team level. That's really all I have to say. Like at tactical level and strategy level. And has to deal with his founders and has to deal with his board / investors. And he's got no training that helps him with this. And the board is like, we don't like what you presented to us. So take 2 weeks and then present us a new vision. Basically a strategy pivot. We don't like any of this. Come back with what you could do differently, or evidence to support why this is the right thing to do and we're wrong. Which they were, to their credit. I was there the whole time. I was there to see
the evidence.
We did a little bit of both. We did a little bit of like, no, these are the right things to do and we do need to do them. But when it comes time to do what you want done, we'll be positioned to do that. And we ended up working out something that we all came away amicably from the divorce. Like each of us got one of the children.
Everybody held hands and sang Kumbaya.
I mean, something. We all had a Coke. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
This is the longest diatribe to get to. It's not the manager. It was the system that he was involved in.
Managers are an inextricable part of the system, right? They propagate the system quite often. And you made a point earlier that this person didn't have the background to deal with this situation. Typically, this happens when it's a solo entrepreneur that comes up with a shiny new thing, and now they're trying to scale up, right? Yeah. So they may be technical in nature, they can invent something, but it's one thing to do that. It's completely another thing to take it to the market, get seed corn funding, get various rounds of funding, and actually commercialize the idea. If you haven't had training in that, which is really, I guess it's just like training in business aspects of growing and running a company, right?
I mean, you just listed several, like the sales, the marketing aspect of it, the actual product and product development aspect of it, and the operations of like driving it to market, actually keeping things on deadline, keeping things moving. Like those are way different skill set you just listed out. So I'm like, yeah, we could blame one person for that. But again, just like the investors, the incentives that those investors were moving forward with. I have no idea. Even now, I have no idea how often they were taking cash out of the business, how often they were demanding to get paid or not. Maybe they were never taking anything out of the business. I don't know about any of that. With the demands of the system, those guys could very easily have shaped. I mean, they could have fired the CEO every quarter and brought another CEO in, and they still would have the same problems. They would have just crushed the new CEO and been like, oh, you're not delivering widgets fast enough. And it didn't matter who you sat in that seat. The system would have crushed the same person. And any employee that worked for them would have equally been crushed.
No doubt. And we've seen that revolving door at several organizations, and not necessarily even small ones. I would argue that at smaller ones, that tends to happen much less frequent. The entrepreneur who invented this thing, whatever it is, they're vested in that. They're 100% behind their product. So mid to large companies, now you have several layers and maybe even a matrix environment. And the whole culture becomes more of a blame culture, right? Yeah. So you're more likely to have CEOs that are going around and around with that revolving door, bring in a new one, give them enough time, and boom, they're gone. In among all of the stuff that I listed earlier, when I missed financial jobs, they don't necessarily have that perhaps because they haven't had the training.
Yeah.
So we do see this quite often, but people that come with them, let's say you have a person who's invented something and they have people that were number 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 in the company. This is just formation, right? Early formation. Those people will be more trusted going forward by that person than some of the new people that these investors bring in, right? Because typically investors will bring in their own posse, right?
Yeah, they will.
And so when they do that, it's like, well, I invented this thing. I know what it takes to make this work. But you're coming in and telling me about all these things about leveraging finance and this and that. None of that matters.
Yeah.
Sad reality is all of that matters, right? Yeah. So either learn it or let them do their thing, you do your thing. And that requires the entrepreneur to step back and say, I'm good at inventing things. I'm not necessarily good at running and building and running companies. So let those people do that and let me just sit in the lab and start inventing things. I'm looking at you, my pillow guy.
I mean, oh my God. Are we pointing out people? Like I think I remember B mentioned about the bankruptcy of Joann or another company. I looked into the company and I love... It
was Joann's Fabrics.
I love going straight to like what people are saying about it online because people are like, well, they got bought by private equity and I don't remember what it was, like 2011 or like a decade ago basically. Yeah. And they're like, oh, nobody was crying about Joann when they were profitable a decade ago. But I looked into and I was like, they've had like 9 different CEOs in that period of time. So I was like, I don't know if you really want to hang your hat on that one. There may have been editing here because Ohm and I had a whole sidetrack where I was like, I don't know if I really want to throw Joann's Fabric under the bus because I can't remember if they're the ones that got bought by private equity and then pretty much changed CEOs every year for like the last decade. But I Googled how many CEOs has Joann's Fabric had, and the AI response gave me a list of 11 CEOs since 2006. And I don't know if anyone's counting, but that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Obviously, no CEO, no matter how successful they are, can survive in this ecosystem, right? And which brings me back to my point, which is the systemic issues. Like I've been in a lot of development teams that have had these bad systemic issues of like unrealistic deadlines just keep getting set. No matter how unrealistic and how many times the team misses it, we just cannot ever set a realistic deadline. Insufficient resources, people get pulled from teams, contradictory KPIs, competing KPIs, stuff like that, you know what I mean? Or OKRs or whatever. fake system you want to use. It's another podcast. These games are the system. They're systemic. The only thing you can do in this situation, like, yeah, that manager was bad. That might be true, but also you keep that resume updated because
That's sage advice.
there's no success that you're ever going to find. Yeah, I've seen organizations like this that are super dysfunctional. What are the organizational types? The 3 organizational types. This is the, not psychotic. There's a term, I can't remember
It starts with a P.
generative, bureaucratic, and psychotic. We did
pathological.
Western.
That's
pathological.
the P.
Pathological. It's
I knew
pathological.
it was a P.
Oh, psychotic, pathological. Listen, it's all
Same
the same thing. It's all the same
It's all
thing.
in the mind.
That's right. So what I'm saying is going back to the Western model theorem. I don't know. Construct.
I don't know.
Robot. Megavillain. Like, these are the logical. These are the system. The type of organization. The system is pathological, and this stuff's just going to happen. You're going to have OKRs and goals and all kinds of stuff that like compete, and competition is going to be a thing. Cooperation is not going to be a thing. It's all like, it's the anti-Deming organization.
Very much so.
You might have good managers in that system, but those good managers are like, the clock is ticking because the system will destroy those people. And then here's my central thesis to the whole podcast. You as the employee will sit there and say, wow, I was great when I was working for this one manager, and they were great. They were lovely. They were awesome. We were on the same page. And then I got transitioned over to this other manager, and they were terrible. So people flee bad managers. But I will posit the organization that is pathological, the regression to the mean there is to always have you ending up as an employee back working for one of these type of people that are bad managers. And then from your perspective, you're like, oh, no, Brian, no, you're wrong. No. There's just bad managers, and that's why most people leave. They leave bad managers. So then the moniker sticks of like, people don't leave whatever. They leave bad managers. And I'm like, no, they flee bad systems, or they get pushed out by bad systems, one or the other.
At the end of the day, you're reporting to a person at the end of the day, right? Your manager is a person. So the organization is nothing more than the sum of its people. And it's these people. There's a lot of things that play into managers being quote unquote bad managers. The wrong hires, no training, people being put into jobs that they're not qualified for. And there's just 3 off the top of my head. There are plenty like that. And you could be a victim of the circumstance in that case, and you're fleeing the system, but it looks like you're fleeing your boss at the end of the day. But having said that, maybe another person that you work for isn't like that other person. So they actually take the trouble to understand what you need to be successful. They set you up for success by giving you what you need, which could be maybe you need training on the job. Maybe you need specific types of teams that they can say, okay, go ahead and form those teams. Maybe you can come in with new ideas and say, well, this team is working in a certain way and it's not proven well for us. So how about we change the way they work? So I came across this not too long ago where a team was failing because they couldn't estimate the work properly. And the manager came in and said, your estimation makes no sense. You talk about these points and things.
Right.
Isn't it just hours at the end of the day? Can you estimate in hours? So they start doing that. But also ask the question, who are you asking to estimate the work? Is it an expert? Is it a lead? Is it an architect? A novice?
Anyone off the street. Whoever will give me the shortest answer.
The shortest answer. So that's what they were seeking, right? It's the smallest number.
That's right.
10 hours instead of 100 hours.
That's right.
And that's the behavior that they were encouraging, and that's the behavior they got. They were very happy. Oh, look at this. All this work will be done, except it won't be done. And it wasn't done, right?
That's right.
So another manager, on the other hand, couldn't care less how you estimate. Fast forward just a few more weeks until this person was sidelined to another project and we had a different manager.
Yeah.
This manager came in and said, I don't want to be involved in how you're estimating that's you. That's the team.
And I'm with them. Neither do I, because like I got a lot of work to do. I can't.
Exactly. In the end, the team decided they didn't even want to go back to the old way of estimation using points. They decided to do Roman estimation, which this manager didn't know anything about, the new one. But when it was explained to them, all we're doing is simply saying, what's the confidence level to get something done in a 2-week span?
The point scale is 1 through 5 because that's all you have in your hand. Oh, I guess you have 0, right? 0 through 5 because that's what you have in your hand. Most people can play this game, and you can put it in all your ALM tools the way it is. It like super easy.
Very easy. And the 5s aren't frowned upon. It's simply just, okay, this is a 5. can we finish it in 10 days? And the answer is no. Then what do? We break it down. Does it need to be broken down into a 2 and a 3 or two twos and a 1 or whatever it is?
I love the fact that I have some senior devs on my team now. It hasn't always been the same. Right now, my team is a lot of senior devs, and we just have a working agreement that says if the story is a 3, then we don't point it. We'll just put a 3 on it and be done. Or 3 or below.
3 or below.
Then we'll just put a 3 on it and we'll call it done. Yeah. And if the story is above a 3, we all agree that we like if anybody on the team thinks it's not a 3, then we keep breaking it and breaking it and breaking it until everybody on the team, unanimous agreement. Unanimous. Not one person on the team. I have a small team. This wouldn't work on a team of 30. My team is like 5 people.
30 is also not a team. That's
yeah, I understand. But this works for us. And when like we always agree that like, yes, it's a 3, good, ship it. Like we'll send it along, put it in the backlog. We'll bring it into the sprint. And it's a very fast process at this point when we've been together for a couple of years.
It's wonderful to think that people aren't going to spend or waste their time debating the difference between a 1 and a 2 or a 2 and a 3. Listen, the difference is only 1.
We don't do any of that.
Just move on. It's the differences that are bigger at higher ends. 5, 3 and a 5, etc.
Like, I often wonder, had I not come from the background of working on development teams, would I not have this attitude as a product manager? I mean, would I look at it completely differently? I wonder if I didn't have a technical background, would I be fighting the team on these things like that? I see other product managers fighting their development teams, being like, I don't understand why you're not going faster. But also without the skill to conceptualize software as it's being produced and then just start slicing things to be like, hey, I don't need the whole front end. You can fake this data. Hey, I don't need a whole API. You can fake that response. I just need the screen to show up and it's a working background, but then it always brings back this, like the shortcuts.
Iterative mindset, of working in an iterative manner. Look, if you don't have a development background, I mean, we can only reflect on our own past experiences. Right. My experiences have been when there's been a manager, product manager, etc., anybody who is not from a technical background, they tend to do 2 things, right? One is they tend to treat software development as stamping out widgets, like manufacturing. So the rate of production is constant in their mind. So they'll say, well, last sprint you did X. If we just buckle up, pull up our socks, we can do X++. And they always encourage a team to go faster. So that's one thing they do. The other thing they do is they will say things like, how long will it take? It's like, when will we be done? Yeah. You often see this from salespeople. Salespeople are wonderful. We need them, but they got to understand.
I mean, how long will it take thing is, I wish that I could remold that question. Can this be done today? Because like what I'll do is I'll get on a call with my team and I'll say like, hey, we need to create a new database table, or hey, we need to create a new, we're on Elastic. We need to create a new Elastic index and work out the fields and work out the template and everything behind the scenes, right? And spin it up and throw it up there and have it functional into the development environment so we can like start contributing data and have the front end start feeding it and stuff like that. Like, I know from experience, I can get my team on the phone and just start screen sharing, and we will work through and contribute, and we can have that form and everything up and running in like an hour.
A working session.
Yeah,
I think they're very powerful.
But that's like me trusting them to figure out how things are done. But when you start cutting into like my specific expertise is like SQL, I'm like, hey, I can do this and have this up and running
faster.
Very fast. Like 15 minutes, I can get you all the SQL statements you want because I'm an absolute wizard with regard to SQL. And I try to keep it under my hat so I don't get stuck as like, oh, the product manager who's writing all the deep SQL statements or whatever. That's not. I don't need, like, the business needs me doing. They need me doing business. They don't need me doing that kind of stuff.
It's just the understanding of the issues and how people treat them as managers.
I think got sidetracked there. Where we got into this sidetrack was like we were talking about systemic reasons, and I wanted to talk about the organizational structure being the real culprit. But the managers in typical modern organizations oversee a lot of employees. I think that all that stuff should go in another podcast. The Dunbar's number and all that.
Right sizing is a part.
Right sizing as an org, and like that's a whole different podcast. Yeah. Where we're going with the org design and org size is again assuming the modern organization is not willing to like break down into Dunbar's number. from all the the rest of these numbers. Like we have the J. Richard Hackman and Harvard found that the small teams, 4 to 6 people, were most effective. Jeffrey Bezos has the 5 to 8 people, 2 pizza team rule. And Ivan Steiner, 70s research about the formula of n minus 1 for communication links between people. You've got the Ringelmann early 1900s work on this. So there's like a lot of studies rediscovering the same thing over and over again about like 5 to 7 teams, 5 to 7 people on a team. Ideal team size, right? If we're going to forget about that for a second and ignore the team structure, the team size, the organizational size, stuff like that, you're going to come into 2 categories, which is the structure of the teams and organizations and all that kind of stuff doesn't excuse bad management, which I feel that's the category that you're representing is like, hey, listen, there's bad managers. Doesn't matter what structure it is. They're just bad managers. Yes. And what I'm saying is the structure itself is what makes the bad manager. It determines the outcome. It makes the managers bad, and it forms the experiences that you're about to give as evidence.
Yes, the structure doesn't help when it comes to turning bad managers into not so bad managers. It doesn't have the processes in place to do that. Meaning the way we get people in, the way we train them or not train them, the way we promote them, etc. Right. There's flaws every step of the way because we're always chasing the cheapest possible way to obtain the talent we think we need. So you don't home grow it because that takes longer and it's not the cheapest, right? So you buy in the talent, and then what happens, right? So one of 2 things: either you buy in talent that's real and they will make a difference. You hope that's the case, but the other side of it is much more prevalent, and that is they don't. You've made a mistake. You don't realize you've made a mistake. They're simply padding their resume because they've now been hired into a role that they've never had before that they can put on their resume. And they're going to last maybe 6 months and move on.
I would argue even Jensen Huang's company, even our friendly neighborhood CEO, who's just a normal guy.
With a wonderful jacket.
Even he probably has on his values of his company, he probably even has like, we're people first with his 60-to-1 ratio for management. Like his revolving door of leadership is like, even if that's a little flippant, just to put the point across, how many to 1 do you need to be to not be able to have time for anyone? Like 20 to 1? You know what I mean?
Realistically and in practical terms, there is a limit. Obviously, because they're only 24 hours in a day.
But again, if that's the structure. If the structure is like, well, the CEO to his direct reports is 60 to 1. So I mean, you should be able to
at least do 60.
Come on, I saw that guy in the news, and he does 60 to 1. So I mean, you could at least do 100 to 1, right? Because you're better than the cool leather jacket guy.
Get me a cool leather jacket. I can do 60. Yeah. Listen, organizations like that perpetuate that behavior, right? There's no way out.
But that's the system. Again, you can't blame one person. You can say, like, well, that's a terrible manager to work for.
It is the system. But when somebody leaves, they don't leave the system necessarily. Not necessarily. Most times it's
definitely the system.
I can't stand my manager.
Sure.
And whether they actually get an interview or not even depends on the manager, right?
I feel now is the time of the podcast to take the viewers aside and say, during your exit interview, you say, everything was great. I'm just leaving. Thank you. Goodbye. You're leaving a company that won't listen to you. Why would you say anything on your exit interview? I don't understand why anyone says anything. But also, carry your manager's direct reports and calculate their mathematical capacity for meaningful interaction. Meaning 60 direct reports.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know how to start with that.
Sorry.
Okay. So 60. How do you have time for your direct reports? When do you meet with them one-on-one? Never.
I'm going to save you time, Om.
You're the CEO, right? If you're doing that, let's say you do half hours. That's 30 hours of your week, right? Just doing one-on-ones. When are you doing your CEO bit? Meeting with the press, doing all of that stuff.
Listen, I watched an interview with Zuckerberg where he says he doesn't do one-on-ones because he's constantly talking to people. And so I don't need to do one-on-ones. That's the thought leadership, not THOT leadership.
TOT.
Okay.
Thought leadership. Thought leadership.
Doesn't make any sense. So perfect structure. Let me read their quotes to see if I want to use any of these.
The humorous scoring on this one.
The organizational Jenga scale, where 1 is stable as a pyramid and 10 is a sneeze from collapse. Well, that was me. I was sneezing. This scores an 8. We remove so many middle managers that blocks the whole tower swing. Yeah, I have another episode in mind for this, which is where does your leadership get their new ideas from, because the immediate diet of the typical American, like, I worry about. But I really worry about the immediate diet of the typical American CEO, because I'm really worried about that. I read a lot of those media ecosystem like outlets, and oh boy, do they put out garbage. A lot of garbage.
Unfortunately, it has gotten worse.
It's bad.
Especially with AI now. You get all these things that are spun out. Like, volume is huge, but the quality has gone down disproportionately.
Let's pivot into a category that I really enjoy, and I think you enjoy it too, which is most organizations measure individual performance while preaching teamwork, and that creates inherent conflict. That creates this cognitive dissonance and conflict. And then the managers have to navigate this contradictory corporate messaging and the reward system, and how it doesn't really, like, how it's disconnected from reality. And this causes a problem. So on one side, I see that, like, the good managers can figure out ways to game this, and like they can rise above these metrics, and they can push them off and deflect as best they can for them and their employees and their department. There's only so much you can deflect. Yep. What was that game where the old Atari game where you're the little thing at the bottom of the screen? Space Invaders. Remember Space Invaders?
Oh, I remember.
Where you're a little guy at the bottom of the screen, and you got to keep shooting, and then like the aliens and everything just keep coming, and they get faster and faster and faster until you die. That's this. With the system. The system is a Space Invader game, and you're down here like doing the best you can until you just get crushed and die.
Wow. When you started talking about metrics and people that come in and they measure things, right?
Yeah.
So oftentimes I find that when people come in as managers, they don't bring with them a sense of what to measure, why.
Yeah.
And obviously when, etc. comes in later. But it starts with, like, why are you measuring anything? And then what are you measuring? To what end?
Yeah.
I don't think that managers get enough training in this. And here, I'm just going to say, if you're a typical manager, did you come up through the ranks? Because if you came up through the ranks, you know what to measure. Even if the organization isn't prizing that, you know what to measure. If you, on the other hand, just came in from a B school and you're just appointed a manager over all these people, you're going to have certain preconceptions of what needs to be measured. It does. So that work does not include certain things. Okay, it includes all of these financial ratios. What it doesn't include is things like safety in teams, team health, get cohesion in your team, right? Get team members to bond with one another. A lot of those things come reciprocal, meaning instead of spending time and effort and energy on team building, you're focused on output. Why spend time on an outing somewhere because the team could get to know one another, what they could be doing work?
I know where you're going. There are some organizations that require stack ranking people. Hey, give me your people in stack rank order, regardless of how much you believe it or not. That's just listen. At the end of the day, we just need like your 7 people that work for you in orders 1 through 7, and then we're gonna dole out bonuses based on they're just forcing you. Yeah. Everything you're saying is like I 100% agree with. Like that's the dissonance of this episode. I agree with you. But again, like the system is like, well, this is the way our incentive structure is, and just fill out the form. Because I like my pushback against this is like, you can only fight City Hall so much until we're like, he's just not a team player on our management team, and I think there's just not a future here for him.
He doesn't share our value.
You're going to find your way out because they're going to push you out because you just fight City Hall one too many times. You got to pick your battles. These are the kinds of things that are going to get slung at you?
Slinged? No, that's not a word. Slung at you. You're not wrong. That is absolutely right. It's about what to measure and also measuring it. So if you're thinking about teams and you're just simply paying lip service, team members will know that because they're going to see individuals being rewarded. Typically, it's your architects or your team leads or your test leads. It's the leads that get rewarded often and not the worker bees. They're going to see that, and that's going to have a detrimental impact on their psyche for sure. But part of this is also those managers don't really have a good way to assess how the whole team is performing and also reward the team. And so they're probably overthinking this at this stage. Rewards are often thought about as monetary. They don't have to be monetary. They can be other things. The best thing I can think of to do with a team when you want to pat them on the back is say the right words, but then follow it up. Send everybody food. Food works great, right? It really helps to gel with one another when you're doing that. That's only second best because ideally you should be around the same physical table, but that's not possible in this case. So you can do things like that, but managers don't see value in that. First of all, they will stymie your attempts to get like even a few bucks for pizza approved as expense. You got to find ways around that, right? So we used to do that. We'd find ways around that, incidentals, things like that, and push it through. So my point about this is they need to know, A, what to measure, and then B, measure those things.
Right.
So measure the right things, measure those things right. They're not taught this. Managers are not taught this in B school. I don't recall going to a single class where you're taught this. It's all finance and HR and marketing and all of that. But, it's insular.
If I'm going to undermine what you're saying, I will throw out, your bonus is tied to you following these metrics or guidelines or whatever. I understand everything you're saying. You've got to get these things across the finish line no matter what, by these dates, by these arbitrary things have been picked out of the air. I'm not saying that your incentives are unfair or bad incentives, but those are your incentives. So what are you going to do? Not hit any of your incentives?
You're going to hit them all. So it's like saying, which horse are you going to feed? You got a chariot with 4 or 6 horses. It's usually an even number. Right. So you win the chariot race. Which horse are you going to feed?
Right.
It's the whole thing. So you're going to feed all of them, hopefully. Right. I guess a better analogy might be the Huskies, whatever it is, the race. I forget the name of it. But anyway, you get the idea.
Sorry, I don't go.
Huskies.
I live in Florida. I don't go to the snow. I don't snow doesn't exist.
I don't think we have such a thing in Florida.
You can't convince me that snow's real. That's what we're getting. That's a quote of this podcast. Snow's not real. I've never seen it. I don't believe in it.
Coming back to the team, right?
Okay,
if your team succeeds as a team, because they should, right? You don't have heroes on a team. Why not reward the whole team? So why can't the whole team be bonused the same way? It's doable. It's not hard, right? But it requires the manager's mindset to move away from playing favorites. Don't reward just the leads or the smartest people or the most vocal people, because it may be the quiet people that are pulling some weight.
Most companies promote their best individual contributors into management and then give them no training or support or consideration of leadership aptitude or anything like that. This is a systemic and constant failure that leads to a predictable outcome every time. If there's one argument I'm making this podcast that supports me, that there's no way you can argue against.
I will try.
But you will try. It is this one, which is the leadership development pipeline. Look, it's rigged against you. We're going to take you out of your job role and be like, congratulations, you're a great programmer or you're a great whatever, individual contributor, subject matter expert, right? The best
pig iron carrier?
The best pig iron carrier in the world. Now you supervise all the pig iron carrying in the world. None of those say that you're going to be great at management or leadership or both, because let's be honest, it's both. And that's terrible. The corporate America, the pipeline for developing leadership is, first of all, non-existent.
So you're describing the Peter principle, right? People get promoted to their highest level of incompetence, and that's very true.
Peter.
It's very true. But I would say this. You say it's the system. But what is it really? It's the people in the system that are doing this. So if you're a hiring person who has authority over hiring or promoting, right? Are you promoting only those people that are the most vocal, they're your favorites? Or are you looking across the team and saying, we need somebody in this role, step up, whoever wants to step up, rotate the role if you will, right? Maybe everybody takes turns a month at a time, a sprint at a time, whatever it might be. Let people have an opportunity to shine. If you're not doing that and you're simply picking somebody, then you are part of the system, right? You're basically another brick in the wall.
So there's a couple things you just said that I will push back against in the most polite manner possible, which is saying, are you crazy? Natural leaders will emerge regardless of if we train them or not. Like, they'll just step up. A sink or swim approach to leadership will, it won't mostly create sinkers. It'll mostly create swimmers. I don't believe that at all.
Why? I'm going to ask the five why.
Why not? Like, why?
But why?
Because
Like a 2-year-old.
Because natural leaders will not emerge without any kind of like formal development program. Meaning, like, if you don't invest in them, you will never pull out the natural leader aspects that you are looking for.
If we go along that line of reasoning, right, and agree that most organizations don't invest enough in this,
Okay.
that means we're really doing a terrible job at leadership development.
The only thing I would add to what you just said is I would add systemically to the end of that and then close my case, Your Honor.
Close and take your
Yes.
dossier and walk out.
I would put all my stuff under my arms and be like, we're both lawyers, and then I go home. Technical experts are forced into management usually, and the only way that they have to like grow their salaries or their careers or whatever if they quote step up into management, and that's like just technical people and be like, I'm good at building XYZ system, I'm really good at orchestrating AWS, or maybe I really understand Kubernetes or whatever, but I can't do that in the podcast. So how the heck does that give you any skill to move up into leadership? Well, like, your people at the top of the organization should know. Well, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. So there should be some kind of track to say, like, these are our best performers, and if they're going to be the cornerstone of bringing performers up under them, we need some kind of track to help them get the skill they need to realize that they're here, but they could be here. What does that gap look like? What is that staircase? What does every single stair on that staircase look like? Yeah. And I would say, before you even get into the next one, it's like corporate America does none of that. And not only do they not do any of that, there's no ROI in any of that. There's no money in any of that. They're not going to spend a single dime.
The model that you're describing here, that is the ideal one, right? That corporate America should do XYZ. I personally, and I think I've said this several times on many podcasts, I'm a big fan of the Journeyman Model.
You're right.
That will lend itself to this, because you're not just simply coming in and being ordained the new manager or the new boss. You've worked your way up, and you've learned through the school of hard knocks by making mistakes, but in a safe environment. Hopefully you have a mentor that you're learning from over a course of time, so you can look back and say, here are all the mistakes that I've made, but I've learned from them, and I can train somebody else. That is the only way to do this. There are cultures where this happens, and those cultures, their managers are those managers that recognize where they came from, which is they were a team member not too long ago.
Right.
They were on the shop floor as a machine operator, right? And now they're a supervisor. They don't forget what pains a machine operator has. Right. And so on it goes all the way up. We don't have that in corporate America. Period.
Yeah, that's a big problem. The leadership Hunger Games, where like one is carefully developed and shaped athletes that are meant to win the Hunger Games, and like 10 is I volunteer shirt, like a random I volunteer shirt, like I don't know, like this is a solid 8. Like, congrats, kid, like you got solid coding skills, you've always done well, like it worked in the middle of the night for us, like you're the new supervisor. It's so haphazard in this category. We're well into this podcast now, like we're deep into the podcast. We're gonna start transitioning to the end of the podcast now, but just to let everyone listening know, I skipped one of the categories, and also on the other side of the ones that we're about to talk about, the one that we're about to talk about, I've got like 6 more categories. I think we might end up splitting this podcast into a 2-parter.
Yes.
A lot of people listening to this podcast will be in tune with the idea of psychological safety. I have a challenge here, which is like skilled managers create safety. Like that's like a skilled manager can like create safety. I had a manager that really propelled my career and helped me get to the point where I can learn, I can do other things, and they really helped me accelerate my career. And yeah, that's a great that you have that one manager, and that might be shaping your view that like, oh no, Brian, you're wrong. People flee bad managers, they don't flee bad organizations. The power structure of the system is what prevents that psychological safety from even being able to take root. You might be able to have one at a point in time, a manager that you work for that's really great, and they create psychological safety and they keep that bubble or whatever, but eventually the regression to the mean is going to push that manager out, and that safety is going to get pushed away with them, and you're going to go back to it's any agile transformation where like the agile transformation goes away when the person sponsoring the transformation goes away. That is this exact category. What I'm saying is it's systemic. It has nothing to do with one manager.
So I'm arguing the opposite side here, right?
Yes,
so I'm
please.
going to say this. Yeah, of course it's systemic, but the system is nothing more than the sum of all its people, policies,
Okay.
and procedures.
Yeah.
And then who develops the processes? Who develops the policies? The system
Right.
doesn't. People develop policies, right? Policies start somewhere. They start with an individual. Usually they start with somebody who's in charge of a domain. Sometimes they start with, people are mostly familiar with HR policies. They start with HR. So what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, it is still people that create all of these factors that we're lumping together and calling it the system, right? You can't fight the system because you can't see the system. You can see policies. You can see who formed the policies. You can talk to those people if they're still around or challenge those policies.
You can't fight the system. You have no chance on making any impact anymore because the system, meaning like the larger collection of people and like segments of people in this 150 broken down pieces of organization all together, if you have no shot at impacting or changing that, you're at the point where you're like, you got to keep your resume updated, because if you have no opportunity, you might as well, like even the most staunch of career coach will be like, you need to look for a way out. Like
Absolutely.
You have no voice anymore. And why are you still there? I feel like that's all arguing on my side of this is like the hierarchical power structure here. You just can't make an impact. You're at the point now where the employees will self-censor, where they don't misalign with what leadership is saying because they're afraid. Like we're in a real dangerous place now.
I agree, first of all, what you just said. And not only self-censor, but even cancel others. That can happen
Right,
too
yeah.
in a fairly toxic environment.
Sure.
So hierarchical power structures do prevent psychological safety from being implemented, right? It's still people that are creating these fiefdoms and power dynamics, etc. Starts with the individual, I think, at the end of the day. It does start with, if you're not a manager, think about how you would be if you were in your manager's shoes. If you are a manager, look in the mirror and say, what didn't I do that could have done to yield a better outcome?
The reason I think this is a great podcast is because obviously we've artificially segmented the for and against here. We're fighting.
We often do.
We're fighting for and against. I think as the podcast went on, I don't think we got closer. I think we got further apart. And I think this and the MVP podcast, those are the two podcasts that are like, when I suggest people listen to Arguing Agile, I'm like, you should listen to the MVP podcast, because that's the one that we've done where we really we never came together. Yeah, we never came together. This is another one where we're not coming together on the agreement here of like, it's a system. No, it's a person. No, it's a system. And the test of psychological safety here is, can you respectfully disagree with your manager on something that's like, maybe not something major, because like that might be like a big red flag and get you in big trouble. Pick something small and be like, hey, like I just don't see eye to eye with you on this one. Like I just don't agree with you. And then see what their reaction is and see if they try to reach common ground or bring you in, or see if they're just like, well, okay, well, I'm the manager and you have to figure it out. Pick something small and just see if this is like, if your organization is on Ohm's side, where it's like, you can disagree and we can work together because it's about the people, or you're on my side where like the manager is just a representative of the system and they're saying like, well, if you don't disagree, then you better figure out a way to disagree and then commit to my side because I'm the manager. We talked about so many different things in this podcast, and I feel we've just like barely scratched the surface of all the things we could talk about. We haven't talked about HR. We haven't talked about, and you started talking about, there's a couple of things that you started talking about that I took notes on in the podcast to take offline for another agenda. So we might have a part 2 of this one. 2 things that I want to point out, and if we go to another podcast, these will be on the agenda for the second podcast, which is your terrible boss. They're a villain to you, but with regard to the system, they are another victim, because, okay, you get fired, you get laid off, whatever, or you decide to quit because you can't take it anymore. But eventually, that boss will also be on the chopping block, because the system that burned you is going to eventually burn them. They just don't see it coming yet. The real villain is the system that promoted that person, that stood them up, you know what I mean, and let them set them up to fail, set them up to burn a bunch of people and then to fail. And then now it's just like the system keeps going despite everyone's misery. That's the main point number 1. Main point number 2 is people love saying like the bad boss. Like that was my main reason for wanting to do this podcast was we had the bad boss. Oh, I just had a really bad boss. Okay, it's cool, and that narrative is great. It's cheaper where it doesn't lay blame on the organization to say like, oh, you have one bad individual in your organization. It makes it sound like, well, maybe if the company just got rid of that one person, they'd be all better and they'd be a great company. That's not true. The system around that person, the system that lifted that person up into the role they're in, that system is broken. Do people quit bad bosses, or are systems, like, is that just air cover for bad systems that are just going to keep being bad forever? I mean, maybe, but also, like, again, my favorite podcasts are the ones we don't come to a strong agreement between the two of us.
We leave behind.
And
you know, so if you're one of those managers in that situation where you feel like you've been set up to fail, or if you're an individual where you feel like you're experiencing a bad boss, we have the same advice for both of you. Keep that resume updated.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if we can agree on one thing, that's the thing.
That's it.
So, hey, and also if we can agree on one thing, which is you should like and subscribe.
Yes, and let us know in the below what you want us to talk about next.